Huh?
Either you use mine or you use that.
ಒಂದು ಕೂಡ ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ.
Sir, very good morning, Rajan sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mehta. Good morning, Mr. Mehta. Good afternoon.
Rajan sir, very good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly. Thank you. I can hear you very clearly.
My name is Amari. I am the Technical Head Institute of Directors.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for making me for a panelist from attendee. I was actually attendee here, then you made it a panelist. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So I am keeping myself mute, sir. I will be, in the background.
Yeah, and please take care of one of this coordination. But for that, this, people speaking or not speaking, all those things, no? When they have to speak differently.
Yes, sir.
That to the coordination. Okay.
Fine, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, total now we are 13 people are there. 13 people are there now. Okay. 14. Yeah. Good.
Hey, Jotin. Oh, I can't hear you. Are you on mute?
I think it's okay. Now I think it's okay.
Yeah,
Good
it's
afternoon.
fine. Yes. We're all set, Okay.
Yeah, I thought better to join from the beginning and get a feel because I have not attended any IOD programs. So I thought it'll be
right. That's a good idea.
Someone never worked out. So I thought it will be a good opportunity.
Right. Right. And the other thing is that, it will help us make sure that the link is right and,
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Chitre.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
I'm fine. Good chance for us to interact like this.
I know.
Yes.
I think in the current times, it is only this interaction that is possible, looks like.
Absolutely, yeah. The only thing is the word current is ongoing move. How many more months it will be, one doesn't know.
I know. Anyway, I'm hoping 2021 will get us some good news.
Yeah,
Okay, I think
that's
I'm
correct.
having a problem with my video. I'll just check out and come back again.
Sure.
Yeah. Any idea how many people participate and the composition of people, etc.?
No, I have no idea actually, because this is my first event where I have got on. I have been, Mr. Balakrishnan had told me to join earlier, but somehow the opportunity never came.
Yeah, same with me. So that's why I thought let's.
Good afternoon, Chitale. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
This is RG Rajan here.
Nice to see you. TV, I can say.
One thing definitely that this pandemic has helped is about technology and communications.
That's true. It's very important.
People have made a big progress, and organizations have realized the benefits which were all potential till now. So
That's right.
once tested, I think people are going to use it really extensively, even in normal situation, whenever it comes.
That is true. Yeah. Earlier we used to say, "Come on, meet." Now people will have to be very specific. Meet means where, and that is true.
So that the concept of telecommuting is actually happening.
So it saves a lot of time in that sense.
True. Very true. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. RG Rajan here.
Oh, good afternoon. Good afternoon. After a lot of difficulty, we're finally able to.
I know yesterday morning you had a lot of difficulty, I think, in joining.
Yeah. Normally I don't know why today I had so much difficulty.
So it's just that one of the days things just go wrong. So I have a Lenovo where the camera has just switched off, and people are trying to help me out remotely, but they're just foxed as to why it's not working.
Yeah,
And
same here. Same here. The camera is just switched off. I don't know why the camera is switched off.
Which laptop you use?
I'm using a Mac Air.
Okay.
So I don't know why it has switched off. I must have put some privacy settings because too many things were going on, and now I don't know, it has impacted something else.
So you're based in Bangalore, ma'am?
Yes, I'm based in Bangalore.
Okay. What about you, Mr. Raman?
I'm based in Bangalore. Yeah, Bangalore.
Okay. So, Mr. Chitra, we are outnumbered on this program, I think.
Absolutely.
But Sunila company, I think.
That's a very nice one.
I know.
And now we are 21 people attending as of now.
Okay.
I think 31. Yeah. Participants 33 now.
Normally, are these people who are directors or they are, any idea?
Yeah, they are directors or even aspiring directors. So they are mix of both. Yeah, senior people. Yeah. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Prasad Chandran. I'm joining in from Bangalore.
Yeah. Welcome. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Oh God, my video is not coming now. I don't know what the hell is it.
Enable it for you. I think
Hey, Rajiv? Voice has come, video is not coming. But whatever it is, the video has to come. No?
Arun sir, Ravi this side. At the bottom center of the screen, you will find an option start video.
Yeah. I've been clicking on the start video for so long, nothing is happening.
Arun, log off and log in, Arun. Maybe that would help you.
I will try that. I've done it too.
Because a lot of times that happens. Just log off and come back again. That's it.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Prasad.
Good evening. Hi, good evening, Revati. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So you're based in Bangalore as well?
Now, currently I'm based in Bangalore since the lockdown. I've not been able to go to Bombay, so operating out of Bangalore now. But otherwise, it is between Bangalore and Bombay.
Oh, you shuttle between Bangalore and Bombay.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mehta, you are in Bombay, I presume.
I'm based in Mumbai. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Mumbai. Yeah.
So I was fortunate to
Something is
spend
happening.
about.
Let me see. I don't know why this fellow is playing. No, but this
And
says
Mr.
that your
Chitali
camera,
also in Mumbai.
integrated camera isn't currently being used by some other. Let me try another laptop. Okay.
I'm sorry, Revati, you said something I missed.
No, I was saying Mr. Chitale is also obviously in Mumbai, right?
That's right.
I'm based in Mumbai, so I think at the moment it appears to be that Mr. Mehta said Bangalore and Mumbai. Yes. Good. Nice to be around.
Right. Pleasure to meet with all of you.
Yeah.
रवि, अरुण जी का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हुआ? रवि?
Yes, sir. He is joining us again, sir.
अच्छा, ठीक है. Okay.
No, good afternoon. Hello, sir.
Sir, he is yet to join, sir.
He is yet to join. Okay.
Yeah, because there is some problem with the laptop, so he's using the second one now.
Okay. Mr. Mehta has joined already.
He is already joined.
Okay. Mehtaji, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, two of us have joined. I think Manu is trying to join. Mr. Puneet Gupta has joined or not yet?
Mr. Ramulu, I'm not able to see you. That's why I was a little surprised when I heard your voice.
Sorry. Okay,
I think you have to start your video down.
Yes. Yeah. That's better?
Good afternoon. Yeah, that's nice.
Mr. Ram, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
RG Rajan here.
Mr. Rajan, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good.
Good evening.
Arun is also trying to join.
Yeah.
I think Arun was having some difficulty.
Yes.
That's what I don't know whether he's now there.
Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Aluwalia, General Aluwalia. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to all of you.
Mr. Aluwalia, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Mr. Rajan, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Yeah, we're all meeting. Some of us are meeting for the first time.
Yeah, yes, true. It's pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Pleasure to meet you.
That's true. Pleasure to meet you.
In time, we can start now. I think another 2 or 3 minutes.
So, Mr. Chitle, how are you keeping? I remember last time we met at the Bombay Chamber governance seminar.
Yeah, fine. I think these programs. Yes, absolutely. That's correct. Yeah.
Now, Bombay situation is easing down, or I'm not traveling to Bombay for a long time, but waiting to start my travel.
I think it's not as bad as one visualizes from outside, but of course, the atmosphere is such that one doesn't know what is around us. So everybody tries to be as precautious as possible. I won't say it's extremely bad.
Yeah, I said if I may add, authorities create a lot of confusion about who will be checked, who is welcome, etc. So people are hesitant that you may land somewhere and get stuck.
Actually, that is the big worry. Because states start doing it on reciprocal basis, and then suddenly you don't know. You go from one city to the other, and you don't know what where you're going to get stuck, and they want a certificate and stuff like that.
Very true.
Oh, can we start?
I think we should.
We can start now. I think we got good participants. We got 70 participants right on it. I think more will join us as we go along.
So just wait for Mr. Arun, sir. Because after you, it is Mr. Arun who's supposed to be.
But okay, we can wait for 1 or 2 minutes more.
Yeah, we should wait for another 2 to 5 minutes. I am already getting in touch with him. He's not picking up the phone.
Yeah, okay. Please go. No time is passing. Time is ticking.
Mr. Rajan, you are based in Bangalore, or?
Yeah, I was earlier in Bombay, but last 1.5 years I'm in Bangalore.
Bangalore, okay.
Yeah. I think you were in BASF, no, Mr. Chandran?
That's right. I was in BASF.
Yeah, you are a very well known in the chemical industry. BASF. Yeah.
Mr. Rajan, you were with RCF?
I was with RCF, yes. I was with RCF.
Oh, great. Same day RCF. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I've heard of you, but didn't have an opportunity to meet you.
Kamalo, very nice meeting you.
Yeah.
You were a neighbor in Bombay.
Oh, yeah. Just across the road.
Yeah.
I had a colleague of mine. What's his name? Murugai. Murugai was in RCF.
Yeah, long time back he was there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in my batch at MBA, University of Leeds.
Okay.
That's how I know him. Otherwise,
okay.
Otherwise, didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
And there was one Mr. Dilip Singh, I think. He was also.
He now he's no more. He's no more now.
Actually, he's no more. Okay.
He's no more.
Yeah, he was. Okay.
Arun is joining. What's status?
I just spoke to him. He says another 2 minutes he'll just take.
Okay. Right. Let's wait for 2 minutes more. Ma'am, you're based in Bangalore or Bombay?
I'm in Bangalore.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I'm still having a problem with this. Okay.
Mr. Arun, can we start then? We are already late now.
You see me now?
Okay, good. Welcome.
Yes. We can see you, sir. We can see you.
Now we can see you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Arun. Good to see you.
Yes.
Okay,
technology,
welcome.
I think.
I'm starting now.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, welcome all of you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to the Regional Directors Conclave 2020 being organized by IOD Bangalore region. IOD headquarters has been organizing a number of programs over the last few months in a virtual mode, but for IOD Bangalore, this is the first virtual program being organized in this calendar year. I welcome all of you. The theme of the conclave is Boards in Turbulent Times, Challenges Confronting Independent Directors. We are all living in turbulent times. Since March 2020, our lives have totally changed. Be the way we conduct meetings, or the way we communicate, or the way we shop, and the way we do many other things. COVID-19 has forced all of us to drastically change the way we function. All companies are shifting from teams collaborating face-to-face to working in virtual teams. And purchasers have shifted their business strategies and capabilities from in-person purchasing to digital channels. Board meetings are now taking place virtually. Therefore, companies need to use the digital technology to improve the performance and reach of the company. It is here that the boards and directors, including independent directors, they should take the lead and prepare a roadmap to take the organization forward. There is no successful example of transformation happening from bottom up. It is through top-down leadership, setting direction, building momentum, and ensuring that the company follows through in transforming the way the business functions. Of course, in all these aspects, taking care of the human aspect is very important. Some people can be trusted to work from home. They are inwardly motivated and self-directed. Others might not be so responsible, or they may not have the necessary facilities to work at home digitally. So, taking these aspects into consideration, the board has to devise a suitable policy to take care of such aspects. One more challenge is facing all directors today. Previously, the physical meetings used to give directors a chance to meet the people and walk around and assess the field, assess the mood, take the pulse, and find out what is happening on the ground. With board meetings now being held virtually, this advantage is not there. So board directors have to find alternative ways to the grapevine. In today's conclave, we will be discussing the above mentioned issues and the need for transformation strategies in the post-pandemic era. The inaugural address given by Mr. Arun Balakrishnan, Chairman IOD Bangalore Region and former CMD HPCL and founder Chairman HPCL Mittal Energy Limited. This will be followed by a keynote address by Mr. Mukund Chitale, former Chairman ICAI and Independent Director at L&T Limited. Then we'll have two panel discussions. The first panel discussion will be by Mr. Prasanna, corporate law expert at the Chambers. And in this, the theme of this panel is challenges of boards and independent directors during COVID-19. And in this panel, we have three eminent speakers, Mr. Prasad Chandran, Mr. Sundareshan, and Ms. Revati. The second panel discussion will be chaired by Mr. Bhanu Prakash, partner at Grant and Thornton LLP. In this panel also we have three speakers. And the theme of the second panel is empowering directors to mitigate emerging risks and liabilities. We have three eminent speakers in this panel also, Mr. Jyotin Mehta, Mr. Ramulu, and Mr. Puneet Gupta. Our contract partner is NLC India Limited. Linde India Limited is our associate partner, and ICAI Bangalore is our promotional partner. We thank all our partners for partnering us. I'm sure the participants will find the conclave interesting and stimulating. Please send your questions using the WebEx platform so that we can ask the participants to address your questions. The vote of thanks will be given by Brigadier Kapoor, and after that we have a half-hour session for e-networking using the WebEx platform. I think that all participants have already been given a separate link to participate in the e-networking. Groups will be created automatically by the platform. Please participate in the networking and meet other participants. I now invite Mr. Arun Balakrishnan to deliver his inaugural address. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I like to interrupt, sir. Your voice is cracking, sir. Your audio is, there is some problem in the audio, looks like.
If all of us switch off the video, the bandwidth may improve.
Arun sir, you can start off in case. I'll just guide you.
Sir, I guess there is some bandwidth issue at Arun sir end.
Help if he switches off the video and only uses audio. You should try that. Arun, switch off your video and try speaking. Ravi, can you hear?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir. I guess, there is some bandwidth issue and, now...
Will it help if he switches off the video?
Just a minute, sir. I have stopped his video now.
Okay.
Arun sir, can you hear us? Arun sir, can you hear us, sir?
I'm trying to get in touch with him on the phone.
Yeah, do that, please.
Arun sir, can you hear us?
Should we go ahead with the other speaker, next speaker then?
Yeah, I think so. Please let us
Yeah, I
get
think
on.
it's our next speaker now. He can join later on if possible.
Yeah, he can do closing remarks.
Yeah. So next speaker is Mr. Mukund Chitale. He'll give the keynote address. Mr. Chitale is a former chairman of ICAI and independent director at L&T Limited. And he has got 4 decades experience of advising companies on the business, financial, and strategic matters. And he has served independent director of many other companies besides L&T. So now welcome Mr. Mukund Chitale to give his keynote address.
Fine. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
Can the voice be clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Voice is clear.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all of you. It is nice on the part of Institute of Directors to invite me to come and speak on this occasion. All of us are going through the one, I would say practically year now, through an unknown, unheard situation. And slowly we came to realize that technology can support us to a great extent. But sometimes it can also give us some trouble, like what we had just now. But I think as an organization, we know how to go ahead in spite of that. And I think that is how we would go ahead and conduct our program. Now, the board, corporate governance, these are all words which are commonly used by many people. And generally, as they say in India, there are 2 things which are most common, and everybody has got an opinion on that matter. And normally the most common things are, since I come from Mumbai, I would use the word Bollywood and politics. So politics and Bollywood is something on which every person in India would have an opinion. Similarly, anybody connected with business would always have an opinion on the corporate governance. I think that's how the world goes around. However, those of us who work on various companies as independent directors or connected with the companies in whatever capacity we have, we are perforce required to study the subject. And I think that is how we come to understanding of the matter. And it is very nice on the part of IOD to conduct this program, where we share the experience of what we know about and what one can talk about. In present world, sharing information is of no use, because I think information is very easily available on the net. So what one really tries to do is one tries to share experience and maybe some kind of a knowledge to that extent which is possible. When we say corporate governance, board functioning, etc., I would say over a period of time, the governance structure in the country has definitely improved. Through the regulation, the matter started improving upon it year by year. However, over a period of time, we also seen that we get some jerks, and the jerks bring their own reaction at a given point of time. And the jerks have been in the form of companies like Satyam, ILFS, DHFL, etc., etc. Now, as these jerks come, naturally, as a country, we take a stock of it and we respond to that. Mr. Arun, would you like to come back to your topic and then I can continue?
You can finish and then you can comment if you want.
Continue, please.
Okay. I'll continue. Yeah. So I think as a country, we get the jerks over a period of years. And if you look at the history of last 20 years, practically 3 or 4 years, we get a major jerk. The whole country looks at the subject, and as a knee-jerk reaction, we would have normally some more stringency of laws. Those stringency of laws will bring in more regulations, more controls, and the story goes on. Now, in spite of all this, there are companies which are prevailing, there are companies which are doing good business, and there are companies which are prospering also. So naturally, there must be something which is good amongst all of us. It's only that some bad elements, which might be a small percentage, which damages the whole population of what is called as corporates and a community called as directors. So how do we look at it? And I thought, let me spend a few minutes on this kind of a subject about various types of boards, their functioning, the directors, and various cultures which are followed. If you look at any board, I think the composition plays a very important part. Now, if I say board, I would broadly divide the corporates into, let's say, 2 or 3 parts. One is the public sector companies. Then you would have private sector. And in private sector, there will be promoter-driven companies, and you can say companies where there are no promoters. Now, public sector has got their own, you can say, challenges and opportunities. I had the opportunity to work in one of the biggest corporates in the country for a period of 3 years. I think more or less, based on that experience, I found that the documentation there is very, very good. That means what comes before the board is absolutely in complete shape. The only tendency I found over a period of time was that many people have a habit of looking at what the government nominee is going to say. Now, pardon me if I make some comments which are not normally stated in public speaking, but based on my limited experience, I found that many people used to have the habit of looking at what the joint secretary or what the under secretary is going to speak in the meeting, and then people follow the tune. I think this is one habit which, as an individual, if we overcome, then I found that to be a very good place to work on, because it's a place where you can exchange your ideas, you can pronounce your thinking, and if the chairman is really strong enough, it can make a material difference in those kind of situations. When we look at private sectors, there are companies which are promoter driven, and there are companies where there are no specific promoters. Having worked in both kinds of companies, I have seen that the companies which have got promoter driven, there, as long as the promoter is willing to listen to the views of others, it makes a major difference in the corporate culture of that company. Because then those people have the drive to do something, and they can also achieve something. Let me share an experience. In a company where one of my friends was working as a director, and it's a listed company. So at that point of time, it was going through a bad patch, and they had to do the restructuring of their loans, etc. And the proposal before the board was that we should ask for a haircut on various in terms of interest, principal, etc. A lot of discussion took place. There were 2 ex-chairmen of banks on the board. Both of them recommended that the haircut on interest as well as principal is normal, and therefore the company should ask for it. One of my friend who was an independent director there, he said, look, we as a company have been going through very good period. Presently, well, 3 years we are in the bad phase, but this being a good company, we are confident that we will come up. And therefore, I would not like to be taken on principal amount of loan taken from a bank. Now, that was a completely different kind of an approach the person followed. So there were a good amount of arguments saying that why should we not ask for it? The whole country is used to companies asking for a haircut even on principal, so we should do that. Some of my friends insisted that no, this is not a good practice. The banks got public money, and therefore we should not damage the public money to that extent. The promoter, who was the chairman of the company, after a period of time, he says the logic in it, and said, look, I accept your logic, we will not ask for a haircut. And then went on the discussion for some time, and they closed the matter by saying that, look, they will not go for a haircut on principal, but they would go on haircut on interest only. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that the promoter himself was there. He took the, what should I say, the decision saying, look, we will suffer to some extent, but we will not ask for a reduction in principal. And I've seen that company growing up substantially after 3 or 4 years. And the confidence of the bank in that company is now at such a good level that the banks come forward and lend the money to such companies. Now, these are the kind of experiences which one gets over a period of time. Now, people who work as independent directors on the board, over a period of time, I think we have found that the laws are increasingly becoming complex. The expectations are very heavy. And therefore, naturally, the willingness of many companies to join, willingness of many people to join on the board keeps on reducing. However, at the same time, it's such a challenging position that there are many of us who still work there, and there are many more aspirants who would come there. Now, how do we look at the role of independent director? Not that I'm going to speak on that matter, but let me just pick up a few points again. Another company on which there was a friend of mine sitting on the board, the chairman followed the practice that it was a small private bank, and the chairman would invite all the general managers of about 10 departments to come and attend the board meeting all the time. So the entire board meeting used to be attended by the board members who were hardly 5 or 6 and about 10 general managers of the company. So on one day, the friend of mine asked the chairman as to why do you so many people attend the meeting. I think his answer was very crisp but very good for that friend to learn over a period of time. He said, look, discuss the matter in the board meeting. A lot of people have a habit of casting aspersions or questioning the ability or questioning the decisions of many others. While these comments are being made, if all the general managers are present, immediately they get an opportunity to respond to that point. If you make a suggestion which is good, they can pick up points. If you make a point which is not correct, they also get an opportunity to respond to that. So in the long run, it is a great learning for those kind of general managers who attend such board meetings, and automatically it also brings in a lot of self-discipline amongst directors, because they're all loose comments, practical talk, because the persons about whom you're speaking or the organization about whom you're speaking are personally present, and therefore one cannot make comments of that nature. And I think I've found that to be very interesting, where the people were getting a full-fledged opportunity of learning from the board, and the discussions were held and how they progress in that kind of a situation. So there are a few items that one has to be very careful about, and normally one should look at the agendas in a particular manner. Agendas which are well laid down, where the papers are well presented, discussions are held. I think those are good items to discuss on, but one must develop the habit of asking the right question at the right time. I think many occasions where we may not exactly know the subject that is being talked about, because we are not all experts in every field, but one must learn over a period of time the ability to question at the right time. And I think if we don't ask the question, then normally we might keep saying yes for something on which we could have said otherwise. In case of agendas which are presented last moment, one should be more careful about. A perfect chairman knows that just 5 minutes before the break or 10 minutes before the closing item, an important item can creep in. Say that, look, I think we need to finish it. Just to the item and let us deal with it. I think these are the kind of items that one should be more careful about while working on a company. Any item which comes to the board which is properly supported by the agenda, or which normally creeps in. Of course, now with electronic meeting, there is nothing like lunch break, but we can say before the closure of the meeting, and where the presentation is not that good, I think one should be careful about such items in terms of its disposal. The other thing which is found in many boards is that the presentation takes much longer time and the discussion is normally provided with very little time. And long presentations made on very fancy papers and very nice charts, everything. at the end of it, if that was not circulated to people in advance, all are expected to read it, remember it, analyze it, and then give their decision. So I think one should have the ability of saying, look, I can't remember so many things, please give me paper, I can study and then I can come back. But many times one finds it very difficult to say all these words in the presence of all stalwarts who are sitting on the board, and then one prefers to keep quiet. But I think if we prefer to keep quiet, then we are the people to be blamed, because the item was presented to us, we were expected to discuss, and then we were expected to decide on the matter. So I think these are few things which one must look at it over a period of time. Mostly what happens is we keep on discussing. We need to discuss the strategy in an item rather than results have been achieved. A company will have 4 quarterly meetings which will have the quarterly results. They are bound to be discussed. Now there we come to the role of various committees called audit committee, nomination committee, risk committee, etc. Now a few minutes on the audit committee. Since I come from Mumbai, I can take only an illustration of Mumbai. Bangalore also might be similar. Many of us stay in housing societies in Mumbai. Now every housing society has got a managing committee. As long as the managing committee is working properly, nobody says anything about it. If something goes wrong, everybody says, look, the committee has not done something right. In most of the corporate sector, if things are normal, the audit committee is considered to be doing a job properly. But anything going wrong, the first blame will always be on the audit committee as to what was the audit committee doing, why did they not realize that the accounts were not proper, why did they not realize that this was not pointed out, etc., etc. So I think those of us who sit in the audit committee have to be much more careful. Does it mean that we need to be accountants to be on the audit committee? I won't say that. I would only say that one should know how to read those accounts, or how to look at the balance sheet and how to identify what is not normal and what is something which needs to be questioned. In fact, those of us who are accountants sometimes tend to spend much more time on that activity rather than what is desirable. But I think that's the problem of being an accountant. So how to strike a balance between these two situations is, I think, very, very important. And there I would say it is something like this. That in a plane should know how to drive a plane. He should know where the things are not going right. He need not be a technical person to repair an engine if something is going wrong. I think people sitting in the audit committee would be of that nature. Should be able to get a feel of what things are not going right, where things can go wrong, and I think they should know how to ask the right question at the right time. I think as far as the audit committee is concerned, these are the precautions to be taken. Their dialogue with the statutory auditors and internal auditors are very, very important. They must bring out the best out of both these organizations. Typically, internal audit, it all depends upon the scope that we give. And therefore, if the scope is perfunctory, what we will get also will be perfunctory. And therefore, I think we must be very, very careful in deciding the scope of the internal audit. Nomination and Remuneration Committee normally should look at the composition, the people who are in the board, and how to look at the replacement of those people at the right point of time. The Risk Management Committee is something which I think many boards have started having, and that will play a very important role over a period of time in future. Because Risk Management Committee is supposed to be looking into many aspects which a company, not only operational risk, but many other types of risk have to look into. Now, all these companies, when they work in their committee meetings, they have to spend a good amount of time. The point is, do they really communicate things properly to the board? Now, how does this happen? Normally, it is the minutes of the meeting which will come up before the board. And the chairman would say, the minutes are before us. Are there any comments? Are we approving it? Typically, everybody would say yes, and we go to the next. However, if as a board member, if one has read those minutes of the meetings properly, and if one can ask a few questions arising out of the minutes, I think one can learn a lot out of the whole process. Very rarely I find this being done. Most places we would say, look, minutes are by those respective committees. Let us take them as noted or approved, and let's go to the next item. I think the learning process would lie for those who are not sitting on those committees to run through the minutes and try and understand what is it that lies in the minutes and what is it on which they could ask a few questions to take it forward. A company which has got a large number of subsidiaries has to be more careful about the subsidiaries. For subsidiaries, there can be 2-3 situations. Those might be subsidiaries in India, or those might be subsidiaries outside India. They might be listed, and so on and so forth. Now, monitoring performance of subsidiaries is one aspect, and monitoring the compliance of subsidiaries is another aspect. But I think one must keep on looking at both these aspects through the board in a very proper manner. Otherwise, that is found to be one area which is normally taking companies out of control in terms of business. Other common area which is found to be misused is the related party transactions. Now, sometimes the theoretical question is, are the related party transactions must, or can these be totally avoided? I think this kind of question puts everybody on a question mark that do we really need to have a related party transactions? If the item is yes, then how do we look at, are we monitoring them properly? Are we looking at them about the reasonableness and various other things on that case? I think that is how those need to be carefully looked at. Whistleblower mechanism is one more area which I think plays an important part in the functioning of the companies, and especially in the last few years, it is noticed that in many cases, the whistleblowers have played a major part in bringing forward issues which were otherwise not being looked into by the company. Now, this is an important element which has been given to the audit committee to look at, and therefore the audit committee needs to look at whistleblower mechanism, how those questions are put up by the whistleblower people, how those are looked into, analyzed by various functions within the company, and how those are sorted out. Sometimes whistleblowers are anonymous, and sometimes people write with their names. Some companies have a habit of saying that anonymous complaint we would not look into. I think that's not a good practice, because knowing the situation and the practical life, there might be many people who are not willing to put forward their names. And therefore, what matters most is what is contained in the whistleblower rather than the name of the person who is blowing the whistle. And therefore, whether anonymous or otherwise, I think one should look at these kind of items which are coming through whistleblower complaints, look at them properly, and then see whether a proper justification exists for what we have done, or a proper inquiry needs to be held to find out the truth about it and going ahead with it. The only point of caution I would use right now is the latest announcement of the SEBI, where SEBI has said that in case you start any forensic investigation about any matter, then you need to inform exchange about the same immediately. Now, somehow over a period of last few years, a tendency has developed amongst many companies to start anything and everything as forensic. Even if a small inquiry is held, companies use the word that we have started forensic audit. Now, I think companies will be more careful when they use the word forensic, because the moment they use the word forensic, this requirement of SEBI would make them to inform the exchange about the fact that they have started the inquiry. Now, in practical terms, no company would like to inform the stock exchange when you are starting the inquiry. They might have to inform it when they have done it. So I think across the country, I just visualize that a complete change might happen in terms of what is called forensic. The wordings might undergo a change to that extent. Now, this is just my personal inference based on the announcement of SEBI that this will have to be informed to the stock exchange as soon as you start a forensic work. Now, while all these things are happening, what the boards would normally be doing? I think generally there are 4 board meetings in a year. Some companies go to 6 meetings, and very large companies sometimes go to about 8 or 10 board meetings a year. Every company should normally have at least one meeting, which is called a strategy meet, I think once in a year. Some companies try to combine the budget meeting and the strategy meeting together. Now that will depend upon the size of the company and the nature of business that is carried out. But I think spending some time together in terms of what the strategy of the company is and deciding how they want to go about in future is something which is very, very useful. Because otherwise, in the course of normal transactions, sometimes the items get enumerated, discussed, and disposed of in a routine fashion. And therefore, it is better that we hold a separate meeting in terms of what is the strategy for the company and how do we look at future. Looking at some of the failures in the recent years, what do we learn out of this as a board? Now, as a citizen, I would say that if we look at the laws of our land, and especially the new laws, Income Tax Act, Company Act, Banking Regulation Act, and various laws which deal with banking and insurance and finance for that matter, and all labor laws also, provisions which are normally very stringent and very many times in practice. But if you look at the last 2 years, I think all are becoming more active. They are implementing all those laws much more diligently, carefully, and therefore all of us will have to be really careful in terms of compliance aspect. Now, does it mean that a board answer is no? But we'll have to strike a balance between, yes, to strike a balance between what is compliance and what is oriented. I think we come to the end of the session. This is the last minute item in the board agenda, saying that look, we have trying to learn in the course of next 2 hours what the board meeting would be. As you go on, all of us learn in terms of what's the question that I need to ask at the end of this. I think we would have learned something worth the exercise. Thank you very much.
You're muted. You have to unmute. Mr. Rajan, you have to unmute.
Sorry. You have spoken, Mr. Chitale, very good address by you. And you have addressed very important points about the various committees functioning and how the should be careful of the agenda points and read them well and put your points of view forward. So I thank you very much, Mr. Chitale, for your wonderful address. And now we have, I think, Varun will come at the end, no? Well, the panel discussion is now on, or you want to come now?
No, it's still not okay. Your bandwidth.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have the panel discussion. Yeah. So now we have panel discussion. The panel session number 1, and the panel session number 1 is basically on the challenges of boards and independent directors during COVID-19. The channel moderator is Mr. Prasanna. He's an arbitrator, a mediator, and independent director. He holds a law degree from the University of Mysore, and he has got over 20 years experience with different organizations like Alpha Laval, Groupon India, and also he was also the chief legal officer of L&T for about 7 years. So he has got wide experience in these matters. And I invite Mr. Prasanna to chair the panel discussion. And the 3 panelists are Mr. Prasad Chandran from former CMD of BASF and former chairman of CGOS, Ms. Revati Ashok, co-founder strategy Garage, and also director number of companies, and Mr. Sundareshan, our very expert matter in chief advisor of IOD and a very good corporate expert. So over to Mr. Prasanna for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And indeed happy to be moderating this panel of very eminent people coming from diverse backgrounds with very rich experience in their respective fields. I'm indeed delighted. It's appropriate that I actually speak a few lines about each of my panelists. Revati Ashok is a co-founder of Strategy Garage, honorary co-founder and managing trustee BPAC, and former managing director of Fishman Spare. She's a startup evangelist and has been a mentor and strategic advisor to several startups, an active angel investor with investments in over 18 startups, of which Dhruva is now a unicorn. She's a partner at Social Venture Partners, involved in venture philanthropy, supporting several social ventures, a trustee of the Academy of Theatre Arts, Bangalore Little Theatre Foundation, and India Cares, and on the Academic Council of Mount Carmel College. Recently, Inc. 42 named her as one of the leading women angel investors in the country. In 2016, Rotary Bangalore Downtown awarded her Woman of Distinctive Occasion. I'm actually abridging a whole lot of accomplishments of Revati. And thank you, Revati, for being on this panel. We're indeed honored and very privileged to have you. We have Prasad Chandran. Prasad Chandran is the former chairman and managing director of BASF. Mr. Chandran has been recently bestowed with, it's difficult to pronounce, but I'll say the English version, the Order of Merit, the highest civilian award by the Federal Republic of Germany. Business Today magazine has named him as among the 100 most successful CEOs in the country. He is the founder chairman of Seagoes, a social enterprise for promoting ethics and fighting corruption. He's currently an independent director on the boards of Bosch, Coromandel International Limited, HDFC Life, and a trustee with Public Concern for Governance Trust, PCGT, and an advisory board member of IIMA, Global Compact Network India, and Berlin-based Alliance for Integrity. He's the chairman of the Ethics Committee of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industries. In association with Nobel laureate Dr. Muhammad Yunus, Mr. Chandran has launched BASF Grameen Limited, a social enterprise in Bangladesh to protect infants from vector diseases. He is currently an advisor to the Yunus Social Business in India. And I'm indeed delighted to have Sundaresan on this panel. Sundaresan is considered as the ECG specialist, and he is the corporate guru. And he is a walking encyclopedia on company law and corporate matters. And I always don't hesitate to pick up the phone, ask him a question, and engage with him in an interesting conversation. It's always great learning talking to him. Thank you, Sundaresan, for being with us. You are part of IOD, so you don't need any special introduction. And thank you very much for being here. Now, the way I want to conduct this panel is very simply this. I would like each of the three panelists to take 2 or 3 minutes to make opening remarks. It could be generally anything, it not necessarily something. It is something which they feel that they should speak from their heart. And please feel free to express yourself. And may I start with Revati? Your 2-3 minutes, Revati. Please go ahead. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much. Indeed, for independent board members, these are difficult times because we are so used to meeting each other in person and discussing several issues face to face, and suddenly to be thrown in such a situation where we come maybe once a quarter or maybe 7-8 times a year together to discuss several issues, and sometimes a little bit more when there are critical issues which require intense discussion, like an M&A or maybe an IPO. You have many more frequent discussions. But generally, I would say about 6 to 8 meetings is what you would have. So it is not a continuous interaction with people on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So suddenly, when you have to discuss many issues completely virtually, it creates a little bit of initial difficulty, especially companies, the committees like the audit committee, to run everything virtually when we are quite engaged with the management to understand the various issues and how they are going about it, and also the kinds of preparation that is done. How clear are we? How sure are we about the completeness of the audit? How clear? How comfortable are we with the completion of the internal audit? These are some new challenges that are being faced. So I think one is to do with the continuity and the robustness of the process, so that people are comfortable with the kind of audits that are happening and the information that is the completeness of the audits that are being done and the results being presented. The other is, when new board members join during COVID times, some of them independent members you have never met before, and you are suddenly thrown into this situation where the composition of your board has changed, and you have a couple of new independent directors who have joined, and there are some contentious issues, or it need not be contentious. There are issues that require deeper discussion. There are sensitive matters to be discussed. How do you build that relationship so that you are developing a sense of comfort with the other directors whom you have never had the chance of meeting in person? So I think that's another dimension that this whole issue is putting up. The third is really helping the company and providing them the guidance and direction in these COVID times. First of all, to respond to the crisis that was on hand, and that is therefore survival, because a number of companies saw their businesses come to a total standstill. And so the question was, how do you survive for the next 3 months? Today we know that we are past that stage, but at that time we didn't know how long this was going to last, whether it is 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months, where there's going to be zero, literally zero business. So I think providing that constant support and guidance and ensuring that things are going in the right direction, these are some of the key things that I have experienced during this last few months. And of course, we can talk about many more things, but I want to be respectful of other people's time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Revati. That's indeed a very good beginning for this panel discussion. Prasad, I would request you to please speak for 2-3 minutes, particularly about preservation of values and preservation of companies' value in these very difficult times. How do you actually accomplish that? It would be great if you can actually cover that also in your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasanna, and also good afternoon to all my co-panelists and all of us who are joining this panel discussion. At a very basic level, I would like to start with a question as to why should anybody join as an independent director to a board? Particularly after the Company Law Amendment of 2014, the Quota Committee recommendations that were accepted on the governance, and the SEBI listing agreements. I think every independent director, he or she should ask herself or himself as to what is it that makes him or her take on to be an independent director. And my answer to this is that on the board that I serve and where I've accepted the invitation, it is basically to help the long-term strategy, the long-term direction of the company, to make sure that my presence helps in terms of raising the governance bar. And that's where making sure that through the committees which I chair or the committees in which I am a member, the committees in which you chair, of course, you have a much bigger responsibility, and the committees in which you are a member, you still have a much higher involvement than just any of the board members. Now, this is very important, not only during the COVID times, but even before, because it's what you ask, what you understand, And how do you differentiate what is legal from being what is ethical? Now, this is very important to know the difference between, you could be exactly everything between the norms of legality, but is it ethical? And how do we change this? How do we challenge this? So to my mind, before COVID, of course, you had the opportunity when you had the board meetings. There's a lot of physical interactions. You go to the company board. Before the board meeting starts, you're meeting a lot of the people, the managers concerned, the back office people. But in a virtual meeting now, the challenge is that everything is in a very fixed time frame, and one does not get the advantage of the informal meetings. So that's a challenge that one faces. But to me, every board member and every committee member, it's the standards of ethics which is very important, making sure that as an independent director, I bring in equitable return to all the stakeholders. That's the challenge. That's I see as my responsibility onto the board.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad Chandran. Thank you very much. I turn to now my dear friend Sundaresan, and I would like to ask him about his opening remarks and how he thinks the entire boardroom landscape has changed from his perspective. Please, go ahead.
Mr. Sundaresan, you are mute.
This is the problem, Prasanna. I think most of the directors, in fact, 99% of the directors in the country have been called mute directors. It's a huge problem, right? The moment I'm going to try and do an unmute, that fellow has already called me a mute director. So this is what happens in corporate India today. So that is the audio issue. The video issue that I have is directors unaware are digging their nose. Sad, sad but true stories. I mean, pardon me for all the board members who are there. Please don't take me very seriously, but I'm just sharing some practical viewpoints. Then there is another director who is pricking his tooth after a lovely meal, not being aware that he is on a video. The worst thing to happen is a director yawning. So friends, I mean, from a physical meeting to a virtual meeting, actually the landscape has changed completely. The biggest takeaway for you today is, if you are going to dissent in a virtual meeting, never ever ask the chairman, am I clear? Are you able to hear me? And that is the time when the chairman is going to tell you, sorry, there is some problem, we are not able to hear you. So during a dissent, please don't ask or confirmation to the chairman that whether you are hearing, you are being heard properly. All of you are being heard properly. Don't have this doubt, am I audible, am I visible and all that, and particularly during dissent. Okay, so these are some of the practical things I thought I should bring it to the attention of members. No, I was attending a PSU board. Can you beat it? I mean, typical PSU boards, pardon Arun, Rajan and all. Now, when you're sitting in your room, you have one person serving coffee, another person serving water. Then there is somebody else cleaning things for you. Then there is an IT fellow who is fixing your computer. How is it possible? The law very clearly says if it's a virtual meeting other than you, there should not be anybody inside the room. Not even your pet. It will invalidate a meeting. So problems like this, people are not aware, and then things go on and on. So which is all a violation of the provisions of Rule 3, which does not allow physical presence of third party into your room. So understand the etiquette is, you need a separate room for yourself. You need to lock the room. You need to be in full attire. You need to have good internet. Now, these are all some of the things that has changed the landscape as far as board meetings are concerned. Now, I will just quickly give you a small tip, okay? During Corona, people are asking you to do SMS. SMS means sanitize, mask, and social distancing. To all these lovely 140 people out here, I am telling you, please do not do all this inside a boardroom. Inside a boardroom, please ensure that you unmask. Don't wear a mask inside the boardroom, because wearing a mask inside the boardroom means you are not yourself. I have seen Revati in action in some of the boardrooms. I mean, God save the other board members. But I'm just saying, I mean, the fiery or you know, the fearless director is what I have seen Revati perform in many occasions. But what I'm saying, never wear a mask inside a boardroom. Point number 2, please don't sanitize, which means you have not read your board papers. Get your hands dirty, walk into the boardroom. If you have not made your hands dirty, you are not good enough to enter the boardrooms. And third one, what I am missing today is social distancing. Now, when I mean social distancing, I'm very clear. Earlier, maybe Prasad would walk up to an accountant or an HR and then have a chai pe charcha, and he will get lot of data. Right? Because today everything is on phone, everything is on video. It's very difficult for people to really go tap the resources where they will really get some information. So, short takeaway is, please do not do SMS, which is do not sanitize, do not wear a mask, and do not do social distancing inside boardrooms. I'm making it very clear, otherwise somebody is going to shoot me down. Okay, yeah, press over to you. Press. Did we lose?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There is some connectivity issue.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I'm not sure what it is.
Prasanna sir, can you hear us, sir? Hello.
A question that I would like to ask you on behalf of Prasanna is basically on the audit committee. Now, has the committee process become tedious and less productive in virtual meetings? What is your take on that?
To whom is this question addressed?
Revati.
Okay.
Revati. Yeah.
I think the audit committee processes initially the first. See, after all, we've had only 2 to 3 quarters, so we don't have enough data points. But the first quarter was tough because we were even figuring out for manufacturing companies, how do you do inventory counts? How do you ensure that things that are, we used to rely so much on physical counts, etc. How are these kinds of things done? So we looked at very basic issues. I think from there we have people have figured out technologies, and this has also put a lot of focus in digitalizing a whole bunch of things that could have been done much earlier, but the boards were not focused on. And now I think every board is seriously focused on how do you digitalize much more so that we know the situation is going to be there for some time, and how can we start becoming more comfortable about all the things that we want to see, and how can these processes become much more technology driven. So I think there is that focus, but there is good and bad. The accessibility to a lot of people is much more because people are not traveling, so therefore people are available for calls, etc. The issue is the informal conversations that we always used to have before a board meeting. If there are some serious issues, how do you get around those? Because the moment you put yourself in front of a video camera, it becomes much more formal. And therefore some of those nuanced conversations that we could always have becomes difficult, and therefore you have to be much more purposeful about your nuanced conversations, which means if you want clarification in advance, you need to pick up the phone, talk to multiple people, It's not that you can say that let's catch up half an hour before the board meeting and discuss this matter. You have to call each person and have some preliminary rounds of conversations. And we have had some big discussions in some of our companies where we have had three to four rounds of informal conversations to clarify and understand in much greater detail. Different people are at different levels of understanding about an issue, and therefore bringing all board members to the same page, and then taking it forward to the board so that the passage of the whole thing is much more well understood and people understand the ramifications of the issues that are being discussed and tried to be passed.
Thank you. Unfortunately, out of time. In fact, I'm being given time only at about 4:45 now. We get just about 11 minutes. But I just want to ask Prasad Chandran that you have been a CMD, and encouraging boardroom democracy comes very naturally to you. And how do you make sure that everybody around the table is actually able to share the opinion fearlessly in a very frank manner? And do you see that being reciprocated by the various chairs on the board of which you sit today? How does that actually contrast? Can you please give a perspective of that?
Sir, President, a couple of points here, because in owner-driven boards where the chairman is part of the controlling family versus other companies where multinationals or other companies where there are no particular owner and it's a professional and you have a non-executive chairman. So in both the cases, particularly to bring my experience on it, I find that the ability to get board democracy very much depends on who, on the personality and leadership style of the chairman. This has not changed whether during COVID times or non-COVID times, but during COVID times it becomes, like Mr. Sundaresan mentioned, it is much easier for a chairman to get away with something which is uncomfortable. Particularly, for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. Like, for example, if there's been something that has gone wrong during the pandemic and a huge accident has taken place, and somebody like me, who's the chairman of the risk committee, might want to bring a lot more on that aspect as compared to somebody who has a financial guilt to it, would want to know the impact on the money. Whereas I'm more worried about the long-term hit to the company and the strategic content of it. So therefore, when you look at board democracy, the matter at hand is very important. When you're talking of long-term strategies in an LTS meeting, we would require each one of the board members to bring their strength and their contribution to the LTS strategy, the long-term strategy. But when you're looking at crisis management, you need the specialists who understand the crisis and a solution to the crisis to be able to come in and help the management. So I think board democracy depends on the issue at hand and how the chairman and each one of our board members can help the chairman and the executive management to meet the immediate requirement and the long-term requirement. Between COVID and non-COVID times, the principal difference I see is what Revati also mentioned, the informality and ability to gain useful pre-board information is difficult because you don't know what to ask for. It's only when you have those little chats, you pick up a lot of things which we are missing.
Thank you. JS, I want to ask you a very simple question. It's very easy in a normal board meeting to just say, all right, this is off the record. But the whole thing is being recorded in a virtual meeting. And even if you said to the virtual meeting, this is off the record, that's also going to be recorded. It's very embarrassing. So how does one actually deal with this?
Okay. Press, very simple. What is recorded, if it is not minuted, becomes off the record. This is what is happening today in the real world, which is you have a real-time recording which is happening for about 2.5 hours. But when the minutes come out, maybe Revati would be just reading up the minutes and would say, hey, I commented on this, I dissented on this, I did this, I did that. Nothing is being recorded. So please understand, whether it's physical or video conferencing, today the strategies are the same. And the onus of entire recording is cast on the chairman now. So there is nothing called off record. If you really off the record as far as the video conferencing meeting is concerned, a great thing about video conferencing today is it becomes an evidence. Earlier, Ramalinga Raju, what he did, today the video conferencing meetings are undoing that. So it's a great relief for independent directors, trust me, and all those independent directors, please ensure that the link that is given, archive it and keep it with you. It is your personal property, because you will find that the video recording and the minutes do not match 100% all the time. So the line of defense would be the video recordings which are available. Here I would say maybe, of course, Prasad is a seasoned chairperson. See, the entire responsibility of a video conferencing today is cast on a chairman. For example, the internet should work. Now, what will he do if Prasanna's internet is not working, man? I mean, end of the day, he's still responsible to ensure that Prasanna has a very good internet connection. These are all the ugly sides of law. Number two, the safekeeping and storekeeping of the tape recordings is the in charge of chairperson, because every meeting has to be recorded. And most importantly, no other person should enter the room of another person entering, which is what I had just illustrated in my initial talk. That is also the chairman's problem. So if you really look at it, the Companies Act is ruthless as far as the chairperson of the company is concerned. So this is what I have to say. So there is nothing called off the record. Everything is online only. It's a good thing for independence.
Revati, I want to ask you something. You know, when you are all meeting independent directors, 4 of you are in the same room in a physical meeting, you are able to confer with each other about the agenda and all that stuff. But do you see that when the meeting is actually announced, do you see the necessity for you people to have an offline conversation amongst yourself to discuss the agenda before you actually get onto the meeting, decide as to who will discuss what? Because all 4 of you cannot talk together at the same time on a particular issue. Lovely. So would you like to allocate, how do you actually do it so that every point gets addressed?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's important to ensure when you're having conversations and questions are getting on routine matters, it is easy. I mean, there is nothing much to discuss. You're just listening to it and maybe a few odd questions. But it is when very substantive issues are being discussed, definitely a pre-meeting is called for. And that is not just for COVID times or online. It happens even in other board meetings, physical board meetings. Because if you want to have those difficult conversations, you might decide who is the right person to bring some of those things up so that, the conversations are yet nuanced and you're trying to build, ultimately, you're trying to build consensus, you're trying to push governance to a higher level. So, you will decide in a given context who could possibly be the best. And there will be some good cop, bad cop. These kinds of things we would typically do to ensure that there is board harmony as well as trying to push the right agenda forward. I mean, I'm not saying there is something really wrong happening in the boards that I'm discussing, but there's always points of view, right? And sometimes there are risks that we may or may not want to take as a board. Different people may have different views on risk, and typically those are the kinds of issues that that we are confronted with, and therefore we may decide who will play the good cop and who will play the bad cop.
Thank you.
Press, to just add what Revati said is actually, Press.
Yeah.
Prasanna, this is what is off the record meeting. This is what is called off the record in a virtual meeting. So to answer your point, the directors discussing among themselves becomes off the record. That's it.
Question. You never I were independent directors. We are not used to the sitting at home and conducting meetings. And now we would, even when the COVID times were not there, we would certainly avoid traveling unless it is absolutely a must, etc. Now, when the old normal is restored, is it conceivable for an independent director to fall back on this virtual meeting regime and avoid traveling? Because at the end of the day, it's considered as presence. But as an independent director, do you think that there will be a tendency to avoid traveling and going for meetings and insist on virtual meeting be conducted, at least for yourself, for the comfort of your home?
There are two things. One is that I find working from home, and particularly in the areas of social organizations that I'm involved with, and a lot of my volunteering work, there is a lot more of meeting time, lot of time that is fruitfully utilized, because there is the entire travel time and other times are avoided. However, if you ask me personally, I would love to go back to my physical meetings. I love traveling. I love to go back to the travel and the board meeting, because I'm very choosy of the number of boards. But every board that I've chosen and every committee that I find that it is that my physical presence, I'm able to contribute better than sitting in my room. So essentially, to answer your question, I might be more productive in terms of the number of meetings that I can attend and save time. But I would very much like to go back to the physical travel and meet mode.
Plus, you're on mute.
Yeah. Prash, can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to second you on that, simply because I love traveling. The travel bug is very, very dominant in me. Thank you very much, and look forward to meeting you at the airport as we used to do before. Okay, the last word is to the corporate guru, because we run out of time, and the last sentence. Sundaresan,
Yep.
how are you going to make sure, if COVID times continue, how are you going to make sure that this particular virtual meeting actually turns out to be an inclusive meeting and not exclusive, that each one to his frame and not really in the room?
Press, to be very honest, let me tell you, these virtual meetings are here to stay. Because in next whatever 6 months, when you tell honey, I'm going to Mumbai, she is going to ask you, AG, OG, do you still want to go, G? Because all these while you were sitting at home peacefully, I was giving you pakoras and coffee and you were attending meetings. Why do you want to go to Mumbai? Should you take the risk? Get the vaccination done and then you travel wherever you want. I mean, this is the typical reply you're going to get from home, correct? So, in all probability, this virtual meeting is going to be here. Some directors are going to take this seriously and they are going to take off from home. Now, if you have to ask me how I could make it more meaningful, the only thing is, I'll tell you my experience, the independent director should team up. Now, what I see in most meetings is each independent director tries to pull, it's like a tug of war. So that inclusiveness is not existing in many boards. Like, for example, if say Prasad has a problem with the internet, nobody has the patience. All that I hear is, Chairman, why don't you please move to the next item? That's not fair. That's not fair. There is a colleague of yours who's trying to express, who is trying to tell you that he is dissenting or she is dissenting, and they want to express something. Now, if this inclusiveness is coming up between the independent directors, if they behave like friends, if they are more connected, I think this beautiful thing called virtual meetings is here to stay. That's what is my take as far as the virtual meetings are concerned.
Thank you. I wish I could continue this conversation with all the three of you. It is so interesting. I had so many other questions to ask, but unfortunately, the
You can
clock
take
is
5 minutes
clearing.
more, Mr. Pass. You can take 5 minutes more if you want. 5 minutes more.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Then I'm going to ask one very, very interesting question. Prasad, you have been CMD and also you have sort of headed a team of people who actually work. But as an independent director, you do not have the interface with the management. How are you going to actually have that interface with the management in a virtual board meeting, number one? Number two, how are you going to actually balance the two demands? One is the need to deliver and to take a decision very quickly. How do you actually make these two irreconcilable things? How are you going to deal with it in a virtual meeting?
In the virtual meeting and the physical meeting, in terms of the subject matter, for example, if the subject matter is let's say a merger or an acquisition, this is something that you need to be able to talk to the KMP, talk to the management, and if it's a multi-divisional company, the divisional experts, the business which is being acquired, we need to know. And if that business is within my subject knowledge focus, then you are able to add more to it and bring a lot more into the decision of the acquisition or whatever is needed based on your there and then knowledge. The management gets involved, the executive management gets involved into too much of here and now, and therefore they may be swayed in, or they may miss the woods for the trees. So that's where I see that as an independent director, I could translate my experience into some kind of a wisdom which can sound for the management. And for that, I would have discussions with the management outside of the board. Actually, the board meetings as such, it would be finally when all the papers are coming in. And papers are coming in, I'm very comfortable with that. I don't go to a board meeting and seeing the papers for the first time of some of these important things. That would, whether it is a virtual meeting or the physical meeting, my approach will be the same. Voice.
Mute. You're on mute.
Both of you can actually comment on this, Sundaresan and Revati, since that we have been given another 2-3 minutes. Is it not the time for us to institutionalize lead independent directors, to channelize communication?
Yeah, sorry, Revati, I'll just take this because I have to head off for another session. My take is yes, it's high time that there are laws which formalize this independent director as an institution and who takes a call and who is on par with the chairman. If it's a promoter run company, he is on par with the chairman, he or she is on par with the chairperson of the company, and I think that is where solutions will come up. I think my take is yes, Press. And Press, with your kind permission, I'll log off. Thanks for this opportunity. Already they are calling, so I need to log off. Thank you all, and see you soon. Okay, bye.
Okay. Revati, over to you. Lead independent director. Maybe Prasad, you can jump in for 2 minutes. 1 minute.
Yeah. As Sundaresan said, yes, I think that is the way to go, but I think we are still a little while away. One of the points that was raised was, connectedness of independent directors. I think that was a very, very important point raised, because in some of the board meetings, you see independent directors acting really independent of each other, and really and this is also somewhat to do with board culture and your own effort at making sure that you are reaching out to the others, even if the others are not reaching out to you. I think it's a very, very important aspect. Not always would other people reach out. So first, before we get into lead, I think the connectedness of independent directors in looking at an issue and looking at different points of view is critical, without sort of forming a coup. We are not trying to capture the board or something like that. Always there is that fear that what are independent directors trying to do, and therefore we want to be mindful and nuanced about what we are doing, but we really want to progress some of these conversations forward.
Thank you. Last word.
Yeah, you know, I would look at this lead director from the particular area of feedback to the board, feedback and the annual assessment that we make for the chairman and managing director, and as well as for the other directors. I think this exercise in a lot of the owner-driven companies might be very nominally done, but I take a lot of pain in doing this, and I think this is very important. And this is where the lead director comes in, because the independent directors, we form an opinion, we give it, and it is the lead director who then takes it to the chairman, talks to the management, brings back his feedback, and then tells us how the action is taken, what correction is taken, and that has to be followed up into the following board meetings. So I see this concept of lead director being very critical, particularly in the area of feedback to the ownership and managing director and to the executive management in multinational companies.
And thanks, Rajan, for giving us that extra 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And thank you, Prasad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All the very best.
I'm delighted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasad and Prasanna. A very nice discussion we had and very stimulating. I thank all the panelists, Mr. Prasad Chandran, Ms. Revati Ashok, and Sundareshan. All of you very knowledgeable, and you get a lot of important points for the directors to note. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, next panel discussion is on empowering directors to mitigate emerging risks and liabilities. And the moderator is Mr. Bhanu Prakash. Mr. Bhanu Prakash is partner in risk practice at Grant Thornton, and he's a chartered accountant. He has 20 years experience in risk management and consulting. And he has authored several articles on corporate governance and is a regular speaker in various forums. I now invite Mr. Bhanu Prakash to take over. The three panelists are Mr. Jyotin Mehta, Chairman Audit Committee of LinkedIn India Limited. Then we have Mr. Ramulu, former Director of Finance of HPCL, and Puneet Gupta, Independent Director at NCDEX E-Markets Limited. So over to you, Mr. Kolmath.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, thank you. So this is not a board meeting, so I started with the first question of saying, am I audible? Good afternoon, everybody. I think at the outset, I thank Institute of Directors for giving me this opportunity to moderate this panel on a discussion on a topic which is in such a vogue today. I think the first panel was fantastic. One key point which I picked up is the chemistry between independent directors, which should really help companies to get value. I think that's something which I picked up. The first panel focused on challenges. In this panel discussion, we will focus on empowering directors. So what are the tools, aids available for independent directors to mitigate risks and liabilities? We have very senior professionals who have been independent directors on the board of many companies as part of this panel, and we'll use this opportunity to get their views. Without further ado, let me introduce the panelists. First, Mr. Jyotin Mehta. He is a chartered accountant, cost accountant, has done his MDP from IIA. He is also he's the independent director, chairman of audit committee of LinkedIn India Limited, Mahindra Insurance Brokers, and Mahindra Rural Housing Finance Limited. He's also the independent director on ICICI Pension Fund. He has been chief internal auditor of Voltus and has held a couple of senior positions in ICICI, 3i Infotech, Bharat Shell. Our second panelist is Mr. Ramulu. Mr. Ramulu, I think your video is off and you are on mute. He's a chartered accountant, company secretary, and MBA from Leeds University. He's been the former finance director of HPCL. He's also played the role of executive director and internal auditor of HPCL. He has been the president of Hinduja National Power Corporation and has also advised Andhra Pradesh Gas Infrastructure Corporation. Last but not the least, I have Mr. Puneet Gupta. Puneet, I am not able to see Puneet. Puneet, yeah, thank you. I have Mr. Puneet Gupta. Puneet has multiple hats. He is an independent director, investor, entrepreneur, and educator. So he has done his MBA from Kellogg's. He has been an independent director on NCDEX E-Markets Limited. He's a board member on UTI, Retirement Solution, managing partner of Kentrus Capital, has held some leadership positions in ACL, SAP in US and Canada, and also a professor and visiting faculty in SP Jain Institute of Management and IMT Ghaziabad. I think it's a great panel. So let me start with first question to Mr. Jyoti Mehta. So you have the vast experience of seeing risk management practices as part of the audit committee function, and you also held senior position in banks where the risk management practices are ahead of the curve and than the other sectors. Given the current scenario, I thought I'll probably get your thoughts on how do you think boards are engaged in risk management practices? Is there higher bar set for independent directors? What do you think they should focus on? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to IOD for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts and experiences with a very distinguished audience. And thank you, Banu, for your introduction. Let me get to the question straight away. And there is a small introduction to that. Today, I think what is happening is that we either have agenda-driven meetings or scripted meetings or regulated meetings. There is very limited time really spent on what the board is supposed to do in its true spirit as far as strategy and risk management is concerned. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that you just mentioned about companies which are regulated or companies which are not. And if you see banks, if you see NBFCs, and if you look at the volume of agenda papers that goes to the directors, I think it is mind-boggling. And I can say with hand on heart that it is impossible for everyone to look at everything that is there in that paper. Comes to companies which have a risk management framework or which are compelled by being in that list which SEBI has prescribed. So you ought to have a risk management committee. And what many of these companies do is to follow the prescription, which means you have maybe a couple of meetings in a year where you have a session, more or less. Very often the risk committee just goes through what the agenda has been presented, some discussions, and beyond that, it is left to the company to manage. Now, the issue I have with both these areas is, in the first case, because it is so regulated and voluminous, I don't think the board gets enough time in terms of really deliberating on risk management. And in the second case, if you have two meetings, one every 6 months, the risks don't wait for 6 months, to emerge. Risks are emerging, and we have seen it in the last 8 months. Risks can come from anywhere, can come at any time. And I think, in a way, we need to get back to the drawing board and relook at the way in which management and the board interact at the board meetings. My own feeling is that very few companies are able to do risk management in the spirit in which it is expected. And the companies which have been sort of regulated, thanks to the regulator, it's a very, very intensive framework, and the chances of those companies slipping up are not very high. But having said that, we have seen banks that have failed. We have seen housing companies that have failed. So even there, I think what I believe as far as risk management is concerned is, let that be an agenda, formal or informal, at every board meeting. Let there be an agenda also outside the board meeting. And I think earlier in the session, and that is a practice, of course, now followed by many companies, you have a strategy meeting at least once a year. My suggestion on that strategy meeting would be that one has to start with the risk and then talk of the strategy. Because only if that happens, then I believe that the risk management as is expected from the board in terms of guidance and advice, as also in terms of the debate that has to happen between the board and the management, that in its true spirit can only happen if both management and board accept that risk management is a continuous exercise. You cannot wait for 6 months to have reviews. you need to do it, and many companies do that. I also have one of the companies where we have it every quarter, and the risk discussions have to be meaningful. It is not a compliance agenda. To me, it is essential business agenda, maybe not about the strategy, because no strategy will work if your risks overtake you. That's my take on the way risk management framework should be.
Thank you, sir. That's amazing view. I think I'm just speaking on what you talked. It's more important to have more periodic conversation, more detailed deliberations. You touched on strategy linking with risk. I'll just use one point. So I think historically people read risk as more from a negative connotation than a positive connotation. So from your experience, have you seen boards or the management seeing risk management conversation as an conversation to see what opportunity, how we can identify the risk and mitigate it, than just saying, okay, look, risk is a negative, so let's see how we can cover it?
Maybe not very explicitly, but implicitly, I think I have seen boards function that way. Particularly, I have seen the debates, if they are constructive between the board and the management. Very often, risk turns into an opportunity, or risk forces you to look at the blue ocean strategy, if I may put that jargon. And therefore, it becomes meaningful. But you are right. In many places, I think risk is a taboo. Risk committee or risk discussions are considered as best completed in the earliest possible time. And then, of course, you lose out the benefits that come from that, meaningful framework.
Okay, so I think one key for all the participants is that risk management should not be a meeting just after the lunch. I think it should be more, in the active time, so that people can be more, meaningful and have a more energetic conversation. Thank you. I'll go move to Mr. Ramlu now. I think so. You've been the executive director of Internal Audit. You've been finance director of HPCL. You've been on the board of HPCL and also on the many joint ventures with large, project finance requirements. I think in difficult times, independent directors have to understand the challenges of projects especially requiring large project finance. How the projects are progressed, what are the priorities of investors. It brings its own set of challenges. So how do you think independent directors should deal with such risks?
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Bhanu, for a wonderful introduction. And first of all, let me compliment IOD Bangalore, headed by Mr. Arun Balakrishna, for taking up such a topical subject, which is of interest to so many professionals, and particularly those who are the budding board members, or who are already on boards, and just about starting their career. Or it could, I'm sure, there are delegates who have a lot of board experience also. I remember that before I joined boards, I attended a similar program, also conducted by the IOD. I think it was in Delhi. So it's a wonderful service that the IOD is rendering to the budding directors, and the 25-30 plus years of my exposure to the senior level, board level, and all that, I'm sure it would be my pleasure to share my thoughts on the subject. Bhanu raised a very important issue, that is project. Project is the lifeline of any industry, because project means growth. Project means something new, and project requires a lot of passion and professionalism. The independent directors have an important role in the project management and supporting the projects, ensuring that the projects are taken up well and progress well and achieve what they're expected to do. Now, it requires a lot of hard work. Review, and more review. And So the most important thing is to ensure that the right people are picked up for the project. And the work starts much before even the detailed project. So it's and it's possibly there is a tendency, and the companies might want to pick up some insider and put them as project head and put some more people. I'm not against putting insiders, particularly people who are technically qualified to head the project. But important thing is not whether he's an insider or outsider. Important thing is that do we have the best brain to head the project? And that is the starting point. And plus, and these are the issues that an independent director must keep in mind. These are the issues that the independent directors must raise in the meetings when the projects come up. Okay, and the team also. The team also, it is important that the people with adequate competence are picked up for the project. And for doing these things, the contribution of independent directors and ensuring that the requirements are taken care of becomes very, very important. A couple of more aspects to mention. The tendency for a project person is to complete the project in time and within cost, and hand over the project so that he is through with his responsibility. So it is a good idea to assign the responsibility to run the project that he has completed to the person who did the project, so that no shortcuts are acceded to, and so that the responsibility for ensuring that the project gives what it is required to give is delivered.
Thank you, sir. I think you have given a really interesting perspective. I think what you highlighted is about having the right team and asking the right questions. I think that's critical key. Now I'll move to Mr. Puneet Gupta. Puneet, you have worked across the world in multiple geographies. You have been an investor. I think from that perspective, I thought I'll check with you. And what do you believe are the board practices which you have seen in developed world, which India Inc. can adopt?
Certainly. Thank you. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the warm introduction, Bhanu, and thank you to IOD and Mr. Balakrishnan for setting up such a wonderful platform for all of us to share our experiences, and certainly for individuals like myself to also learn from these experiences from my eminent panelists. In terms of your question specifically, actually, my experience has been a little bit more US and perhaps Canada centric. So if it's okay, I'll provide some color on the differences between the US, Canadian, and the Indian sort of corporate governance practices, because world over, I'm sure there is a little bit more diversity than perhaps I've captured. And I think, like you asked, there is learning to be had from both sides of the aisle. There is learning to be had from a US perspective vis-a-vis the Indian landscape, and then also the Indian perspective vis-a-vis the US landscape. But perhaps in order to structure the discussion, we can think of, at the highest level, from an academic perspective, the corporate governance structure in US, Canada, India is all Anglo-Saxon based corporate structure. So philosophically, intentionally, they're very similar. But if we sort of think about breaking it up into three segments, let's take one segment as strategic or operational intent. Let's take the second as the economic incentives, and perhaps the third as the diversity and the makeup of the board. And then, we can perhaps use these three as the segments that we can talk about differences between us and them, so to speak. So I think, in my experience with the US boards, I found the boards to be spending a lot more energy on the strategic intent. Therefore, there is a lot more debate and discourse on the strategic direction of the business. There is a lot of energy spent in making sure that the directors are up to speed in terms of the domain knowledge, etc. And I think from an Indian perspective, the strategic intent is certainly there, but a compliance intent is also very strong. And I think, in fact, that is actually a good thing. I think that's an area where the developed country, could probably enhance their, board depth, if you will, in terms of the specific domain knowledge and from a compliance perspective. I mean, compliance is always a double-edged sword, too much compliance is bad and too little compliance is bad. And so I think one has to strike the fair balance. Clearly, I mean, I find that, the US boards tend to have a little bit more strategic intent or strategic direction and a lot more penciled into the domain of the business. I think the second part on the economic incentives is the hot topic is the compensation. Clearly, the compensation levels for us here in India are significantly lower relative to our counterparts, and also there is a lot of conflict in terms of, or suggested conflict in terms of economic incentives based on the performance of the company. So if you look at the Fortune 500 companies in the US as an example, publicly traded companies, the independent directors end up having a lot of options as a result of sitting on the boards, and that ends up forming a significant percentage of their compensation, which in our structure is practically not allowed. And then there are other sorts of economic incentives in terms of the risks that are posed to the independent directors. So a lot of us are concerned about the liabilities we may end up having as a result of sitting on boards. And so D&O insurance becomes very key. So the director's liability insurance is far deeper, far broader in the developed part. In India, I think that does exist and it's mandated in the Fortune 500. But as you go besides that, as you go into the smaller segments, the insurance aspect is a little less understood or a little less developed. I think that's an area for us to learn. And compensation is a debated topic, but certainly I think in order to reduce the liability of independent directors, insurance could possibly be covered by a larger array of companies. I think in terms of diversity, one could look at size of boards or gender diversity and things of that nature. And I think in those cases, it's really a trade-off. You would find that there are certain boards in the US that have far more gender diversity, but in India also I think it's picking up. Women directors are mandatory now in the larger organizations. The smaller organizations are very cognizant of that. So it's really a toss-up, if you will. But one thing I do notice in terms of the makeup of the board, the US boards have a CEO duality, and so there's a lot more general management representation on the board. There's the CEO has a larger role to play, if you will. In India, because of the recent regulations, I think that separation, if you will, is much larger, much deeper. And again, a point where at least I personally feel that we are a little bit ahead relative to our developed counterparts in terms of making sure that we've separated the powers and delineated. And that's also good for the CEO because it's hard enough running a company. You can certainly use all the help that you can get on the board. So I think in summary, it's those sorts of things that are different. But our regulator and through the Companies Act, I think has done a wonderful job of really having a very detailed model of corporate governance, which I don't think exists in a lot of different parts of the world.
Thanks, Puneet. I think you and Jyotin touched upon 2 points. If I really summarize, I think there is rule versus principle is what I can pick up from this conversation of whether it's really relevant always to go by the rule book or is it focus on the principle. And you really touched on very, very important topic, compensation. I think that really sets my ground for the next question. I'll probably check Mr. Jyotin Mehta on this. There is a significant dependent on compensation, as Puneet also mentioned, the remuneration for independent directors. Whether the remuneration impacts the independence of the independent director is one thing which there's a lot of deliberation. So there's a need for restriction and so on and so forth. I just thought I'll get his thoughts on what do you see as a general view of directors and what can be done to address this challenge better. So you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, it's a tricky question, no doubt, but I will try to be as forthright as I can be. And at the same time, I think some of the interpretations which I look at, in a company, you will find the CEO compensation, which would have moved by a fairly large proportion if you were to look back 20 years down, as to what it is today on a like-to-like comparison. Now, if you look at the board compensation, today there are two elements very clearly which are available. One is your sitting fees, where of course there is a prescription that it cannot exceed a particular amount. And let me tell you that amount was increased only recently. Otherwise, earlier it used to be 20,000 rupees per meeting. Later on, I think they became reasonable and they gave a higher limit. But having said that, I think one has to really look at the sort of intricacies in terms of how much time a director needs to spend. And in most of the cases where we find, board members are fairly distinguished, very experienced, they bring in a lot of value to the management. It's not necessarily by the qualifications and experience, but also by the type of interest. I've seen boards where directors are so involved and so interested, and it's not with any hope of recognition, because they are passionate, that they use their network, they sort of connect with people and help the management to do whatever they want to do in a better way. So I personally believe that directors in most of the companies, and let's look at the good crop, because you will always have those 15-20% who may be figureheads, and I'm not going to refer to that. I am talking of directors who are sincere, who bring in value to the board. Now, if you look at it, and I think my colleague, Mr. Puneet, also mentioned on this subject in terms of diversity between what happens here and what happens abroad. Two parts. One is, I think, compensation needs to be related to the sort of contribution and also to the risk. And, this DNO policy, which all have been talking about, I think as far as India is concerned, it's more of a comfort factor. We have not had it where the policy has been used anywhere. But at the same time, for the last 15-20 years, I remember one of my first employments, was the pioneer in sort of taking up DNO policies along with the software companies. So though the policy is there, it gives you an assurance, as Mr. Gupta mentioned, Puneet mentioned. I would say that the implications are still not understood. I've seen many board members, requesting management to tell what it is all about. So let me just say that the risk is covered by DNO policy as we know on paper. We don't know because it is an uncharted territory as far as India is concerned. We have not had such litigations or instances where this policy has been used. So let me get back to compensation. I think compensation earlier permitted the sitting fees, a commission and stock options. And at some stage, I think SEBI, looking at some experiences, maybe rightfully felt that stock options is not a very good idea for directors, and therefore they just cut it out. But to me, the stock option has the same risk as perhaps the commission has, because commission is also linked to your profits and book profits for that matter as prescribed. So if you can permit commission, I am not able to understand why stock option should be such a big taboo. No, that's just my view. The second part I believe is that even when it comes to commission, there is always a hesitation. You see, board has got all first among equals type of people. So really what happens is that how do you sort of distribute it or allocate it? And parameters obviously become tricky. It's usually the chairperson who would exercise the discretion on how the commission is allocated. So it's not necessarily something. So on one hand, you have a company which is very progressive, which rewards its employees, including the CEO level, based on performance. Rewards or penalizes, let me put it that way. And then you have a board where the only performance related item perhaps could be the commission, and that also in a very sort of indirect way. So my own view is maybe one can look at other elements. Do you, for example, why do you want to restrict it to a sitting fee per meeting? It's not really that a director only contributes at the meeting and throughout, otherwise outside the boardroom he is not contributing. Can we not look at something contractual, where, and this practices, I think today the law is not banning it, but, implicitly it is not being done. But why can't we look at something which is more lasting? Anyway, you have got a term of a director which is of 5 years. So you may as well then think in terms of a contractual type of an agreement, very transparent, but which could be a little more meaningful in terms of the director also feeling comfortable that, there is some certainty in terms of the relationship as well as the remuneration which is going to come. The other part is, as I mentioned earlier, that if you can permit a profit-linked commission, why is there a hesitation about the stock option part? Because the same principle actually should flow through. That if someone can have an impact, wanting to avoid options because it could impair the independence, then I suppose commission is equally the same spirit, maybe not as large as one would make out to be. So having said both these things, I think I want to put in, also in terms of the scale of the companies, etc. I think for companies which are in the medium sector and the small sector, the fees as prescribed by the law seem to be adequate to me. As they grow, of course, they get into a better position, then of course the commission kicks in most of the companies. But I still believe that there should be a little more contractual type of arrangement, which would perhaps induce the directors to be more committed and more, bringing in the contribution as one would expect. Having said that, I don't mean to sort of underplay that directors don't bring value if they don't get paid for. But I'm just saying that, one has to be fair in terms of how the compensation should play. But the last part is relating to companies or entities where there is a regulator. So again, if one recalls, when it came to banks for a long time, commission was prohibited. And I think over a period, RBI also realized that, and they felt that, with some permissions and with some caveats, commission should be made available even to the private sector bank. I don't know what happens in public sector, but I know for sure that private sector banks which are doing well and which are established with RBI approval do give commission. So I am seeing some, sort of progressive approach in this. Even regulators are going towards it. And I am hoping, and I'm quite hopeful, because last 4-5 years, lot has changed in corporate laws. I'm sure people will realize that one has to move towards a situation where the directors are equally incentivized in terms of what happens without having a doubt on their independence just because of the compensation structure. That's my view.
Thank you, sir. I think what I'm hearing is, reward the value for the directors which bring on table, keep it long term, have a more transparent structure and contractual structure is what I think, I heard. Very interesting points, important points. I'm sure regulators will if they're hearing this, some of this will be factored in. I'm just cautious of time that, I have 5 more minutes at best. So I'll probably quickly check with Mr. Ramlu on one point on related party transactions. I think it continues
Mr. Bhalu, you can have 5 more minutes. You cannot 10 minutes totally.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think I'll probably take that. Thanks for the generosity. So the related party transactions, I think it occupies significant mind share of the board, especially the independent directors, given the liabilities which are attached on the directors. I want to get your thoughts on if as an independent director, what are the few aspects you should consider when you're looking at related party transactions? How can you leverage the support of the wider group of the people, whether it's legal team, chief risk officer, or internal auditor, or management, to have a better governance over related party transactions?
That's a wonderful question, Bhanu. And related party transactions approval ends up with the audit committee, independent directors. So it's a huge responsibility, onerous responsibility, in fact. There are a whole lot of issues because related party transactions are all encompassing. That means any purchase, sale of goods, leasing, then your sale of any property, appointment of any agent, underwriting, sale of any securities. So virtually everything under the sun is covered. And it's a onerous responsibility. And I think one of the things is to be considered is making the liability of independent directors, particularly with reference to related party transactions, more than the other directors. I mean, that is what it means, because the approval is with the audit committee. Okay. So, so that I think definitely needs to be deliberated by, I think there is a definite case for the authority, the responsibility. It should be at least equal to the other directors. Okay, so that that point I thought I must make, because it's a onerous responsibility, particularly because the independent directors are outside directors. They don't bring all the technical expertise which may be required for running a particular company, a particular industry. So they have to be dependent upon the internal resources which are there and all that. And that point is very valid. Every attempt must be made to leverage the internal audit, to leverage the legal, to leverage the other departments wherever expertise is available, to see that the review is done and the company is getting value for the money which is being spent by the company with reference to related transactions. So all this becomes very important. One important point was made by Mr. Chitle this morning and this at the beginning of the session. Consider whether any of these and some of these related party transactions, whether avoidable. And if it is avoidable, if it can be avoided, nothing like it. Because you should be right. Apart from that, you should also be seen to be right. So, if it is possible to avoid, nothing like it. But I'm aware in a corporate world, there are significant advantages of having contracts with related parties. Because, I mean, if you take a scenario of a joint venture, the joint venture partners would have a significant insight into the industry. Okay, they can bring a whole lot of value. Okay, so one needs to do a thorough review. It has to be arm's length. It has to be ensured that this is in the best interest of the company, interest of the company who is supplying or who is buying from the company concerned. Of course, that is that would be their primary interest. But as far as the company in which the independent director is operating, he obviously has to look at the interest of the company, and all aspects have to be seen. Even when these issues go before a court of law, the most important thing that will be seen and reviewed by the courts is whether the required diligence has been there in reviewing the transaction. Has it been adequately reviewed? Has it been? Is it an all appropriate steps have been taken to ensure that before this contract is concluded with the related party, whether this has been done keeping fully in mind the interests of the company. So it's a huge responsibility. It's an owner's responsibility, and the independent director should take all the inputs that are available from the all the agencies that we talked about, including the chief risk officer, to ensure that the entire transactions are done, thoroughly reviewed, and then reviewed.
Thank you, sir. I think you highlighted a very important point. In a review, it's important to ensure that whether the adequate due diligence is done and whether that has been recorded accordingly. I've seen, I think one of the things which of late is in related party transactions, I mean, especially where there are voluminous, is to probably do a pre-audit committee or a pre-meeting to sort of engage with them more in detail and get a more insight than before the board meeting. So the conversation is much more meaningful. I think Revati touched upon it in the previous panel on having a conversations well in advance so that it gives a much more holistic and more meaningful conversation just before the board meeting. I really picked it up.
One minute. See, these are typically, I'll just take a minute. These are typically voluminous transactions. These require a significant amount of time. So it would be a good idea to have definitive timelines, which means the papers, the audit, the board papers must reach the audit committee members, independent directors, within this many days in advance. Okay. So the other panel members, there has been a whole lot of talk saying that, you would get a whole lot of proposals, and some of the items are placed on the board after the commencement of the board meeting and things like that. Okay, so it is possible, and there are exigencies, and the company may want certain things to be done at a very fast pace and things like that. But all the same, enough time must be available for conducting the review. That's important. So you put necessary deadlines saying that, okay, papers will be considered only if they are submitted this many days in advance.
Sure. Thanks, sir. That's an additional aid for the independent directors, which definitely it's important suggestion and people should consider it. Coming to Mr. Puneet, you have been a member of nomination and remuneration committees, a couple of companies. I just thought I'll probably pick some thoughts from you on, given your experience on that. If I really look at it today's time, change in leadership can bring its own set of risks, challenges for the companies, can also impact the organization. So as a board member, what do you think are the aspects which the director should consider to mitigate the associated risks of changing leadership? I just thought I'd reflect on that.
Yeah, thank you, Banu. That's a great question. Let me start by saying that, there are so many organizations which are promoter driven, or where actually the directors don't really have the opportunity to participate in leadership change. And therefore, generally speaking, the talent pool for within the director community for folks that have had the opportunity to hire multiple CEOs, etc., ends up being limited. And in fact, on the flip side, as an investor, we found this to be a really hard talent to find. In a lot of cases, we've almost got former HR professionals involved. So it's a challenging area, and one that I personally continue to learn more about. But in a recent situation, we had the opportunity to hire a new CEO MD, and it was a fairly interesting experience for me also personally. There are a couple of facets perhaps that I can point on. First, I think it's a tremendous opportunity to get a new process in place. A process that is transparent, accountable, and equitable, and it sends a strong signal both to the internal and the external constituents of the company. So here, the independent directors especially have the ability to utilize the internal and external HR talent. And that is very important because that is a tremendous way to sort of mitigate that risk by making sure you bring the right amount of HR talent internally and externally to the table to help drive that decision making. Because all of us know that the cost of a wrong hire could be tremendous and very large. So it's important to lean on all the appropriate resources that you could bring to bear as a board of directors. I think second, it's also a great opportunity. And again, I'm also talking about these points in the context of what we did. It's a great opportunity to reassess the strategic direction of the company. A lot of times, the company has gone through a growth spurt for a certain number of years and has gone in a certain direction. And now you would like it to go into a different growth spurt in a different sort of a direction. And so it gives you the opportunity to bring a new leader that will perhaps be able to bring the new type of skill sets. One of the things that as an entrepreneur I've learned and is the ability to take a company from 0 to 1 may vary from the ability to take a company from 1 to 10 and then 10 and 100 and so forth. And so it gives you a tremendous opportunity to bring change in leadership and fine tune that ability based on the growth trajectory of the company. And so that sort of becomes very, very important criteria for directors to take into account, that the new leadership is in line with the future strategic growth of the company. And I think lastly, it's also a tremendous opportunity to reinforce the culture, or in certain cases, change the culture of an organization. Specifically, since we are talking about risk management, a lot of the times, risk management is just a lip service given on the boards. It starts from the top. The CEO has to be serious about risk management, and one has to sort of make sure that it is known to everybody that it's an integral part of the company. And it's not for the detriment of the company that these processes are put in place, but more for the benefit of the company. So I think the change in leadership also presents this tremendous opportunity to the board to sort of bring about a new culture, which may not have been so easy to do with the previous leadership. So I think in general, it's a great platform to structure a new process. And in our case, we also took the same opportunity to restructure the employee stock option program as well, and make sure that the economic incentives were also looked at differently with the new growth trajectory of the company. And subsequently, we were able to utilize some of those things. So, I don't know if there is a secret formula, but I do think that at least personally, what I've found is that there is a huge dearth of talent here. And one of the things for risk mitigation as a board member is to be able to utilize the right set of outsourced parties who have HR talent or internal HR pool to make sure that the processes are set in a way that they could result in hiring the most important person, if you will.
Thanks, Puneet. I think I really picked up two key points. Whenever there's a change in leadership, so if the directors should really consider the new leadership, whether it's aligned with the culture, aligned with the strategy. So it's good to do that homework before they plan for any hiring. I think I really picked up those two as the key action points. I come to the end of this panel discussion. Thank you all the panelists. It's been really wonderful having you and your views. I now hand over it back to Mr. Rajan from this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bhanu.
Mr. Bhanu, thank you very much for a very interesting panel discussion. And thank the panelists, Mr. Jyotin Mehta, Mr. Ram Mundu, and Mr. Puneet Gupta for presenting their points of view. A lot of learning points from these panel discussions. I now invite Mr. Arun Balakrishnan, concluding address, and make the. Mr. Arun Balakrishnan.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I am loud and clear.
Yes.
You are loud and clear.
Distinguished speakers, panelists, and all of you who have logged in, a very good afternoon to you. I was supposed to be giving the opening remarks, but thanks to the internet failure, and to add to that the power failure, I shall ended up giving you the closing remarks. All the same, it has been a very wonderful afternoon. Both the panels were excellent, and our keynote speaker, I think, was superb in the kind of thought processes he's brought into this discussion today. This is the last program of IOD Bangalore chapter during the year 2020. What a year this has been. Started with a declining economy in the first few months, only to be topped by a pandemic that has never before been seen by anyone in the last 2 to 3 generations. While the government action in shutting down the country may have saved quite a few lives, it has devastated the economy. The small and medium companies that are employers to many millions of our countrymen, and almost killed the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry. Those of us who have been on the board of these companies know what corporates have gone through in the last 1 year, last 9 months for that matter. Preserve cash, build in resiliency have been the key operating words. Cost cutting, resorted by many mid and large sized companies. Many companies lean and resulted in better EBITDA and margins in the second quarter of the year. Independent directors have been cheerleaders in this regard, and also in adopting technologies and digitization of most activities. To protect lives, we started working from home or work from anywhere. While this brought sorrow to both the commercial real estate business, employees happily went back to towns, big and small. And as the months progressed, the government proactively changed the regulations to make corporate life easier. I was so delighted to attend a general body meeting sitting at home, like most of you must have done. Not that I love AGMs, but as an audit committee chairman in some company or stockholder relations committee chairman, one has very little choice. The terrible year 2020 unfortunately is coming to a close in a few weeks from now, but with some good tidings. Research labs and pharma companies have come out with the vaccines that will hopefully kill this virus that has been keeping us indoors, or worse still, killing us. Quite likely, our country may follow the footsteps of the United Kingdom in approving the vaccines, which hopefully let us mingle socially and have in-person board meetings, at least occasionally. This is what all the board members were saying really today, saying that nothing like in-person board meetings where you can physically sit and chat with your fellow directors and have informal meetings, etc. The stock markets across the world are reaching new heights every day. Whether investors are seeing a bright future, or is it easy money or a combination of both, I'm not very sure about that. But certainly it has improved my portfolio and made me tolerate the COVID-19 restrictions to some extent. Whatever that may be, it is a happy farewell to a year that has changed our lives. Ring out the old and ring in the new, as they say. Let us hope the new year will bring in new tidings. But two great challenges are staring at us now. In many parts of the world, cyclones and heavy rains have caused unrest in the last couple of years. The way things are going, the world will run out of names for the new typhoons and cyclones that our environment is being subject. Climate change have as much impact as maybe the pandemic. And the vaccine for the impact of climate change, we know, cannot be synthesized in a year or two in the case for the pandemic. A carbon-free economy, I feel, will be an imperative. Our 2000cc internal combustion engine powered personal cars and public transport may have to give way to electric and hydrogen powered fuel cells. Green hydrogen is a new mantra. The oil refineries, which were so much part of my professional life, and planted in its place to save the planet. ESG, your environment, social and governance, has already become the new way to go. Independent directors will have to play a key role in this transformation and government regulations can make us responsible for ensuring the companies whose boards we sit on do follow the guidelines in this regard. Back to now, I'm happy that IOD Bangalore has managed to attract such outstanding speakers as we have heard today. The detailed introduction been done, Mr. Rajan, so you know who they are and you have heard them all. With this, let me hand back to Mr. Rajan for taking the webinar further, and let me wish you all of you a very great 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Balakrishnan, for your concluding address. I now invite Mr. Brigadier Raja Kapoor to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I won't take much of your time. I feel honored and privileged to have got an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this special day. On behalf of IOD fraternity, I convey my sincere gratitude and thanks to all speakers, panelists, and our esteemed guests for being part of this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we all have witnessed eminent speakers and panelists coming together by taking out their precious time and enlightening us with their valuable thoughts, wisdom, and ideas. These sessions are very important, wherein diversifying thoughts emerge, which touches everyone, thereby bringing all of us together, especially people who are part of this larger intellectual ecosystem, which is vibrant, has original ideas, and this embryo has to be nurtured and come out with a solution as to what is going to be good for the system and the country. I would extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Mukund Chitale for delivering the keynote address. The insight Mr. Chitale shared and showed us with respect to transforming governance structure in terms of business, which were very well received. He laid stress on the strategies, rather results, and these were suitably supplemented with examples. I would also like to express my special thanks and gratitude to all our eminent panelists and moderators who have captivated us with their discussions, deliberations, and ideas by sharing their valuable insights on various contemporary issues pertaining to both sessions. Let me take this opportunity to thank each panelist for both the sessions. Also, a special thanks to both our moderators who stimulated us with their words and ensured us with some burning and thought-provoking questions. Thank you all. But as always, this evening would not have been complete had it not been for this wonderful and participative audience. It is because of all of you that gave us the courage and confidence in hosting such knowledge-based events. Finally, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Mr. Arun Balakrishnan, Chairman, Bangalore Region, for his strategic guidance and unstinted support. As always, special thanks to Mr. Rajan, Board Member of the National Governing Council and All India Honorary Director IOD, for his relentless support at all times. A word of appreciation to Team Bangalore, who stood together and contributed phenomenally. Special thanks to our technological support team at Delhi, headed by Ravi, who executed and handled the support system very diligently. And obviously the senior hierarchy of Headquarters Delhi for their unstinted guidance and support. In the end, I would like to convey our gratitude and thanks to all our sponsors who supported us. It is Messrs. NLC India Limited, a profit-making Navratna CPSU Government of India enterprise, a leading public sector company engaged in lignite mining and power generation. A special thanks to Mr. Rakesh Kumar, Chairman and Managing Director. Thank you very much, sir, for the positive response. Second is Messrs. Linde India Limited, has a history of 130 years on the heritage of innovation with strong focus on technology delivering innovation, quality and reliable services. A special thanks to Mr. Abhijit Banerjee, Managing Director, and Mr. Pavan Marda, Assistant Vice President and Company Secretary. And lastly, the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, Bengaluru chapter, who is our promotional partner. As we are aware, ICAI is a premier professional statutory professional accountants body Their objective is to promote, regulate, and develop the profession of cost and management accountancy by working closely with various industries, Government of India, state governments, and other regulating bodies. Also, in order to strengthen the industrial interface, ICAI Bangalore chapter is associated with industries institutions by conducting various programs and seminars as knowledge partners. A special thanks to the chairperson, Ms. Manjula, and secretary, Mr. Satish. Before I close, I'm slightly digressing from the main topic, but I would like to inform that IOD keeps hosting national, international, region-wise seminars and webinars, and also the Golden Peacock Awards 2020, which was instituted by IOD in the year 1991 and is regarded as the benchmark of corporate excellence worldwide. The applications from the industry are invited in 15 different fields. Our next Global Peacock Awards ceremony is on 15th December 2020, covering awards on environment management, occupational health and safety, eco-innovation, and energy efficiency award. So I will request all of you to kindly please join us and witness the award function. Also, ladies and gentlemen, applications are invited for Golden Peacock Award 2020 for Corporate Social Responsibility and HR Excellence. We look forward for your continuous support and also recommend mentoring other organizations to come forward and succeed in related field of awards by participating and sponsoring, as these initiatives will give access to all regional offices of IOD. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, like Mr. Rajan had already briefly mentioned, I would like you to experience this unique post-networking Regional Directors Conclave 2020 breakout session, wherein you once again have to log out from here, log in, wherein the groups of 8 to 10 people will be formed by default, giving accessibility of networking amongst each other. The login details have already been shared individually by mail, and it has also been reflected in the chat box. Let me once again thank you all for taking out time by accepting the invite and being part of this webinar. Have a nice day and stay safe. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. I now invite Meghna Ramchandani to inform about the record sessions. Meghna, please.
Hi everyone, and very good evening to all of you. We've started the meeting, the other WebEx meeting. I've posted the details on the chat. We request you to leave this meeting and join that meeting where we will be taking you to the breakout rooms.